Imagine you work for the government. You have a problem, a few hundred people with uncontrollable abilities who operate by their own rules, ignore legal boundaries, and create political disasters every other week. You can't eliminate them officially, that's a criminal case and an international scandal. But if you find someone with a personal grudge against them and hand him the right resources, he'll do it himself, and your hands stay clean. That, based on everything the film actually shows us, is exactly what happened in the world of The Incredibles. And today we're going to break it down step by step, using the evidence that Pixar left right there on screen, hiding in plain sight. Welcome to Operation Kronos. To understand how Operation Kronos actually worked, we need to start with the infrastructure that existed before it, because supers in this world weren't just people in costumes. They were embedded in a government structure that no one ever officially acknowledged out loud. There was an agency. No name in the credits, no official status anywhere in the film, but it was real and it was active. It knew everything about every registered super. Their real name, home address, family situation, ability profile, full history. When the lawsuits hit and the government decided to remove supers from public life, this agency ran the relocation program, new identities, new cities, new lives. The man running it all was Rick Dicker, and he held the entire network in his hands. Here's where it gets interesting. When supers started disappearing one by one, Dicker noticed. He personally warned the ones he could reach Bob Parr, Frozone, telling them something was wrong, to be careful. And yet the disappearances continued, and there was no investigation, no official inquiry. From the government side, complete silence. That's not negligence. Silence at that scale is a policy decision. Let's talk about money, because this is where the theory stops being speculation and starts being logic. Syndrome is Buddy Pine. We see him as a child, an ordinary kid with homemade rocket boots, a superhero obsession, and zero advantages in life. No powers, no wealthy family, nothing that explains what we see when he grows up. And what do we see when he grows up? A fully operational military base inside an active volcano on a private island, an army of trained mercenaries with military-grade weapons, his own rocket program, a zero-point energy shield, and most importantly, dozens of sequential Omnidroid prototypes, each one more advanced than the last, each one the result of years of R&D that would cost more than most countries' defense budgets. That is not a passion project. That is not a self-made tech empire. That is state-level funding, and no one gives money at that scale without getting something in return. The only thing Syndrome had to offer was results. Supers eliminated quietly, with no official trail leading back to anyone. The government got what it needed. Syndrome got his resources. A perfect arrangement until it wasn't. Now, let's look at the timeline, because there's something here that's very hard to explain away as coincidence. The lawsuits begin. The government launches the Superhero Relocation Program, officially framed as protecting supers from public backlash. And almost simultaneously, Syndrome appears with a fully built infrastructure. Not years later, after he had time to construct it from scratch. Right away. Which means the preparation was running in parallel with the official negotiations about shutting the program down, and someone knew in advance which direction things were heading. Now here's the second detail, and it's even more important. Syndrome targeted supers with surgical precision by name. He didn't just know that Gazerbeam or Metaman existed. He knew where to find them, how to contact them, what type of mission would convince a specific person to show up alone. That's not newspaper information. That's operational intelligence from classified files. Exactly the kind of files stored in the agency's restricted archive. And right here is where a question comes up that seems to destroy the theory unless you answer it directly. The most obvious counter-argument goes like this. If the agency was feeding data to Syndrome, why was Rick Dicker personally warning Bob Parr and Frozone about the danger? Someone running a conspiracy doesn't go around giving its targets a heads up. That's a fair objection. And it closes the oversimplified version of the theory, but not the precise one. Because Dicker almost certainly didn't know. He saw the symptoms supers disappearing. Something is wrong, and did the only thing he could, warned the people he could reach. His actions were genuine, because he was never part of the conspiracy itself. He was an honest man inside a system where decisions were being made several floors above his clearance level. The leak didn't come through him, it came above him. Someone with higher access opened the archive selectively, pulling only the files needed for the operation. Dicker couldn't see that, because in classified systems everyone only sees their own level. His warnings were sincere, and the conspiracy kept running anyway. But there's a second question that gets asked less often, and it's actually sharper than the first. If Operation Kronos was a stress test for the Omnidroid, the logical assumption is that Syndrome would pick the strongest opponents, fighters who could push the machine to its limits and help it evolve. But the victim list doesn't fit that logic at all. Psychwave had telepathy. Everseer had clairvoyance. These aren't combat abilities in any conventional sense. Against a giant combat robot, they're objectively less useful than someone like Mr. Incredible or Meta Man. So why are they on the list? This is exactly where the pure stress test version of the theory falls apart, because the list of targets doesn't look like a tournament bracket, it looks like a database. Like a registry being cleared out, entry by entry. The real logic becomes something different. The goal wasn't to select the best opponents for a training exercise. It was to systematically work through every name in the government's super registry. Anyone who had a file in the archive became a target, regardless of their power level. The Omnidroid did improve with each fight, but that was a byproduct, not the objective. The objective was erasure. Elastigirl never made the list, not because she was too weak or too strong, but because she was the only active super who had genuinely, completely stepped away. She didn't just relocate, she rebuilt her identity so thoroughly that her file could have been marked inactive. Everyone else still had threads connecting them to their past, small reasons to be found. And Bob was always meant to be last, reached through a different protocol entirely personally, through Mirage because he was the final target from the very beginning. The film tells us almost nothing about Mirage. We don't know where she came from, how she ended up working alongside Syndrome, or what her life looked like before any of this. For a character this central to the plot, that's a suspiciously clean slate. The official explanation for her betrayal is deliberately vague. Maybe her conscience caught up with her. Maybe she developed feelings for Bob. But look at the timing coldly. She didn't turn on Syndrome when he was killing supers. That didn't seem to bother her. She flipped at the exact moment he decided to unleash the Omnidroid on a live city and emerge as a public hero. That's a meaningful distinction. A quiet purge of the super registry is an operation that can be denied. A public attack on Municiberg, followed by Syndrome swooping in as the savior that's a trail you can't bury. Whoever was funding the operation from the outside would lose the one thing that protected them: plausible deniability. If Mirage was always a handler someone placed alongside Syndrome to make sure the operation stayed within agreed boundaries, then her betrayal stops being an emotional decision and becomes a professional one. The operation broke the terms. She followed her instructions. And here we get to the real mistake in this story, not Syndrome's, because he did exactly what you'd expect from him. The mistake happened during the hiring process. Buddy Pine looked perfect on paper. Built-in motive, deep anger, no moral constraints that would slow things down. That's exactly the profile you want for dirty work that can't go through official channels. But rage and narcissism aren't professional qualities. They're fuel, and fuel eventually burns in whatever direction it wants. Syndrome never just wanted to get rid of supers. He wanted to prove he was better than them. His endgame, selling the technology to everyone, making every person a superhero, destroying the very concept of exceptionalism, had nothing to do with the arrangement. It was his personal agenda, growing quietly alongside the operation until it eventually consumed it entirely. The moment he decided to stage a public spectacle in Municiberg, it stopped being about supers, or the government, or any kind of deal. It was a narcissist who decided that a quiet victory wasn't enough. He needed an audience. And that's the moment the whole structure collapsed, because no system can control a person driven not by logic, but by an unresolved wound from childhood. The Parr family derailed the final act. Syndrome died. The island base was destroyed, along with any records that might have connected back to anyone. And then, In Incredibles 2, the government brings supers back, quickly, almost without resistance, as if the ban had never really meant anything. That's easy to explain if the theory holds. The people behind Operation Kronos have nothing left to fear. Syndrome is dead, Mirage has vanished, the operations files burned with the volcano. The superhero program can be restarted from a clean slate because the evidence is gone, and with it, any reason to keep the lid on. But here's the thing that stays with me. Throughout all of Incredibles 2, not a single character asks the question, who was actually responsible for the disappearances? No one investigates, no one pulls the old files, the subject is simply closed. Maybe because the answer is too inconvenient, or maybe because Rick Dicker at some point did put the picture together, and realized the only thing he could do was stay quiet and keep protecting the Power family, not because of any instruction, but because of whatever conscience was left after years inside a system that had used him without telling him why. If you think the government knew, drop a like. If you think Syndrome worked alone, tell me in the comments which argument is keeping you there. I'll read the best ones, and we'll break them down in the next video. And subscribe, because the next theory involves a character you'd never suspect.